Hey everyone. My name's Shane Mailman. I'm the Director of Programs and Operations for the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. Thanks so much for signing up for our Hero Chat today. We've had over 100 classes sign up, and I'm really excited to get it going. So a couple housekeeping items, and everyone's been doing great with that so far. Feel free to leave your camera on. Please keep your mic off. Up in the corner with the view, hit your speaker view so you'd only be able to see the people that are talking. And we are recording this and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel and share it with everyone that signed up, because I know there was a few that just couldn't make the time work. So, and I think the last one, Bruce, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and Bruce will do his best to address them as we go through the chat. So I guess the next step is I'm going to pass it off to Bruce Rainnie. He's our CEO and president of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, former CBC broadcaster and Olympic broadcaster for 14 years now, Bruce? Am I right?
24.
Well, I just missed it by a decade, so
Oh,
no big deal to start. But I'll pass it off to you, and let's get it going.
what's a decade among friends? Absolutely. Shane, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this. We really love to do these because you get a chance to hear from true Nova Scotia sport heroes. And today we have a young woman, one of our youngest inductees ever to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. You think about the term world champion. Just think about that, everybody. World champion, best in the world. She was the best in the world in her age group at taekwondo. She's from the Sipekne'katik First Nation in Nova Scotia, a member of our Hall of Fame, a member of the Mi'kmaq Sport Hall of Fame, and just a wonderful young person who we've been really lucky to get to know through the years. So, Sara-Lynne Knockwood, welcome to this Hero Chat. It's great to see you.
Good morning. It's great to see you and everyone else on today.
Yeah, it's a good crowd. Look, why don't we start? Can you take us back and tell us how and why, when you were just a much younger woman, taekwondo was the sport that entered your life and stayed with you for quite some time?
Sure. So this goes back to, I think I was about 10 years old when I really first started exploring different sports and really trying to find, where my fit was. And myself and my two younger sisters, actually, we started with the sport of boxing. So we went to a boxing club for quite a while in Lower Sackville. And at some point, unfortunately, it actually closed down. And so we wanted to find something else, and we wanted to find something similar that, wasn't too far from us. And we were actually looking for kickboxing, and we couldn't find a kickboxing club near us. And so my uncle had actually found this club in Dartmouth that was taekwondo, and we weren't exactly familiar with it. So we went to check it out, and it was very similar to what we thought kickboxing was, which was really just boxing and kicking in terms of sparring, and sparring is essentially like a practice fighting in a sports sense. And so we went to this taekwondo club and we tried it out, and all three of us fell in love with the sport.
I know you did, and I know you especially did because your coach is a guy I've gotten to know as well. He said you not only loved it, but your work ethic. You just would, whatever drill he mentioned, say do this 10 times, you'd do it 100 times. Well, why do you think you loved it so much, almost from the word go?
I have no idea. When I think back to it, taekwondo was a sport that I think that even by then I was 12 years old when I started that. And I think even at that age, I recognized that I could potentially be really good at it. It felt good. It made me feel good. And, when I was practicing and doing my training, it's something that really made me feel very strong. And I think, without really realizing it then, that was really important as a young female, that, I was able to learn how to use my body, understand my body, and be able to feel strong with it.
You mentioned the word strength. There's a great question here from a young kid it's the Shatford Memorial School, and grade 5-6. Rebecca Stone is the teacher. I love this question because I'm curious to see where you take it, actually. Question is, what is most important for you to do to stay strong?
Like now, or just
I think that that's the beauty of this question because it's great for now, but also flip it back and as an athlete as well.
that is a great question, and this is really fun because I haven't seen any of these questions yet. So, it's important to stay strong and to feel strong because that kind of goes hand in hand with being healthy. And, even when you're younger and even now where I'm at, where I'm a little older, it's important to feel strong, feel healthy, because when you feel strong and healthy, that's when you're really at your best, regardless of your age.
Here's one for you. Same school. Have you ever been afraid to spar with someone?
Oh
In
my goodness, yes. So sometimes I get to tell a story of, how sparring was set up in our club. And so in our club, in our training facility, there was essentially two rooms, and there was a front room where we would generally spar. And when Taekwondo has different belt levels, so you start at a white belt, and then you do testings or gradings to then move to the next belt level. And so you move up through the colored belt ranks, and eventually you reach black belt, and which is really the top belt color. And so in the front room is where a lot of the beginners started to spar, regardless of age, but a lot of the beginners were sparring in the front room. And then so what was happening in the back room is that, anyone was welcome to spar in there, but that's essentially where the black belts hung out, the perhaps the older, more experienced male and females, black belts. And so beginning, I very much stayed in the front room. And then, as I started to learn more and to perhaps achieve more in competitions, I started peeking at that back room. And I wasn't a black belt, but I felt like if I wanted to get better, to get stronger in my sparring, then I had to go into that back room, which was a really scary thing for me. I think at that time it was perhaps I was a 15-year-old girl against, grown men black belts, grown women black belts. And, one day I made the decision. I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to step back in that room and I'm going to spar with the black belts, the more experienced people. And I was scared. I was scared, but I said, I know that if I want to get better, I have to make this move. And so I did it scared.
What's it like? What's it like? Because most of us, well, a lot of us will never win a gold medal at a major games. It's a dream for a lot of us, but many of us won't. You did many times at North American Indigenous Games and as a world champion as well. What's it like to win that gold medal and see all of that hard work mean that much at that time?
It's really special. And it's special to me because, you work so hard to achieve something. And then it's really special to get there and to achieve it. But the most special thing about it is that a lot of other people worked really hard for me to be able to get there. There was tons of fundraising, back home with our family, with our community. There was a lot of people supporting me and backing me to make these opportunities possible. And so I really think that, it's great to win and to achieve things, but when you're able to come home and to tell everyone that, we did it, and I wasn't just doing it for me anymore. I was doing it for my family and my community because they had poured so much into me to make that possible.
You won a world championship in Miami. I think you were 16 years old, or you were under 16 at least. And there's a great story about you getting an old Nokia phone and making a call. I'm going to get you to tell that. I want to encourage everybody, if you're hearing something and you want to add a question for Sarah, please just type it in. Make sure you mention the name of your school, and we'll get to it if we can. All right. But tell the kids about the call you made when you were crowned world champion in 2002.
Yeah, I remember that call so well. And so this was a long time for me. And, back then cell phones were quite different. We didn't have the fancy touch screen iPhones. We had, either a flip phone, or there was these rectangle Nokia phones that I swear took a month for the battery to die. But then again, I think we only used them once in a while because there wasn't social media on your phone, none of that. It was just phone calls or texts. And so, I remember, first of all, when we would compete, we often competed as a family. So we went across the country, we went to England, we went down in the States as a family. My sisters were always there when I competed. And so when we went to Miami for the open worlds, it was very different. It was just myself, my dad, and my coach. And so it was very different to not have my sisters there, my mom, my aunts, uncles sometimes. And it was a bit lonely. So I remember competing and I remember going through the matches and starting to win matches to advance towards the gold medal round. And then I remember beginning the gold medal round thinking, okay, this is it. This is what we're here for. And it was a bit of a rough start. But then I started to think, okay, let's make adjustments. Let's do this. Let's get this going. And then at the end of it, I came out as the winner, and we were all very happy. I remember celebrating. I remember hugging my dad, and then my dad pulls out that old Nokia block phone and says, "Do you want to call home?" And I remember walking away with this phone, calling home, and I remember pacing back and forth as I'm waiting for someone to pick up. And I remember I was really emotional then because, I was happy, I was excited, but then to be able to call home and tell them, like, we did it, we won the gold medal. That was a really emotional moment for me because it was so special, because it meant so much for me to be able to do that for them.
It's interesting how to this day you say we won. We won the gold medal. The we has always been hugely important for you, hasn't it?
100%.
A couple of questions coming in here from Enfield, grade 4 and 5. Do you still practice taekwondo? And if so, what is your belt level now?
So I am a black belt. I achieved my black belt. I did a testing that was very long. I did that when I was 16 years old. I don't train and compete anymore. I did eventually find a kickboxing club, and I like to go there from time to time to stay active, but it could be possible that I could make a return to Taekwondo sometime in the future for just training purposes, and just to stay active.
You know what? The grade 5 a coin class is listening because this question has come through. Did you ever win any of those sparring matches with the people in that back room when you took the plunge?
I did. I ended up doing pretty good. I mean, when that was just training, so we didn't keep count. Some days were better than others, and I definitely learned a lot. But it was something that I don't regret. That's for sure.
Got a question from the 4-5 Armstrong class. You probably can't count these up exactly, but can you give a sense of the major medals you have, how many you have to this day, and what are the ones that are, I guess, most important to you to this day?
Sure. I tried to keep count and I lost count somewhere along the way. My mom did a really good job for a while of keeping count, but again, lost count somewhere along the way. So with Taekwondo, you often have different opportunities to compete and to win medals. So I always competed in the sparring, which was that kind of practice fighting for competition. But we also did patterns, and something that perhaps it's less glamorous because no one talks about it. But I was really strong in patterns too, and I took some pride in that. So often when I went to competitions, there was a lot of competitions where I did win double medals, one in sparring and often one in patterns. So I think I don't know what the total number is, but the larger competitions is I just did sparring in Miami for the World Open, and so that was a gold medal. And then I think the other largest one would have been the European Championships. I don't I must have did patterns there. I don't recall, but I did. I definitely did sparring there as well, and I won a gold medal there. And that was really, again, really special because it was somewhere else. It was something different, and it was all of European championships, and so that was really cool to do. There was Pan Americans. Again, I won a gold medal there, maybe a gold in patterns. And then there was several national competitions when I was a colored belt, Eastern Canadian championships. There was all kinds.
You know, it's a good sign when you've lost count. That means you've had a really good career. But there were also medals at North American Indigenous Games, right?
Absolutely.
Gold
Yeah.
medals. What's it like for a native of Sipekne'katik to win a gold medal at a North American Indigenous Games?
It was a really, really cool experience for me. So the North American Indigenous Games they're a multi-sport event that happen, within Canada and sometimes within the United States that's open to all Indigenous people within Canada and the United States. And so when I started competing, it was very much mainstream. So what I mean by that is I went to a lot of competitions and I did all of my training with, people who were non-Indigenous. And so, and that's fine. But then when I learned about, because I didn't know it existed until I went there, when I learned about the North American Indigenous Games, it was really special because I was able to go there and I saw it was the first time I competed against other Indigenous people. And I didn't, up until that point, I've never seen another Indigenous Taekwondo athlete. So it was really, really cool for me and such a night, like such a special experience to be able to do that. And so I had the opportunity to compete in 2002 in Winnipeg, where I was a junior athlete, and I did a double gold there. And then I was able to compete again in Denver, Colorado, some years later, where I think I did a gold and a silver. Yeah, and that was just such an amazing experience. And it was really a special time for me.
A few questions from the 4-5 barrel class in Dartmouth, uh, and others are asking as well. What's your favorite Taekwondo move? What was your go-to when you wanted to secure a victory?
That's a hard question because when you do a discipline like Taekwondo, it's very important to set your opponent up. So you want to do combinations that kind of condition them, get them used to something. So you're getting an inside look here. You get them used to something. And then when you do that same kind of combination, then you follow up with something different because they're not expecting that. And so I think I really liked my favorite one was the side kick because one, I got really good at it and really strong. And that's from going in that back room with those larger opponents and doing and trying to survive. Really, I had to stop them with a side kick. And that was really more out of survival. But then it became my strongest tool in that I was able to control an opponent and a match with that side kick. And I don't know if that was a finisher, but it was definitely that thing that set things up where then I could follow up with a roundhouse, perhaps to the chin, to the face, or back or spinning back kick. So there's lots of things about Taekwondo.
Good to have all those moves too, for sure. From the 3-4 Besner class at Burton Enninger, I love this one. What did you do to prepare for your matches, especially the really big ones like gold medal matches? How did you get your head right for those huge moments?
Yeah, that's a great question because there was so much. And so I made sure that, I had a good training schedule. And so back then that meant not training every day, but almost every day I was training. And then, even for the European Championships and the Open Worlds, it was a bit of a different style of Taekwondo. So Taekwondo has many different styles. And so not only was I training in the gym, and doing, training at the track to kind of get my cardio and my stamina up, but we also watched video footage to just understand the style of sparring and understand the style um, that taekwondo and to understand, what they like to do a lot of and to learn how to counter that. But before every match, back then it was not uh, an iPod or just your phone. Before every match, I actually had a Discman where you would listen to a CD. It was not digital. You would have a physical CD and you would listen. I would listen to music and I would just the day of leading up to when I would spar is I would very much get in my own just mindset and I would steer clear of other people and I would be quiet and I would actually I remember doing affirmations in my head, speaking to myself in a positive way, saying, yes, you are strong, you've done the work, you can do hard things and you're going to succeed. I remember speaking to myself in my head a lot before my matches.
Question here from the grade 5 Lundy class. What are the challenges that are difficult to overcome as an Indigenous
Mm,
athlete?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's it's interesting when you're going through it. You don't really notice, or perhaps you don't understand. So when I was younger, and like I said, I was doing a lot of those mainstream competitions where I was often the only Indigenous person that I would see other than, my sisters. And that's okay. And that's something that happens a lot in sport and other things. But, you know, it does make you feel a bit alone. Um, and sometimes you get feelings that creep in that, that tell you you're not meant to be here, you don't fit in. And, there's just these sorts of thoughts perhaps that happen, that you're different from these people, you're not made for this. That's that sort of mentality. And that's really difficult to try and manage, especially, when I was so young. And then so that's why I said attending the North American Indigenous Games was so special for me, because it was that first time that I was in that environment and I saw other athletes that looked like me, that, had a similar background and experience, life experience with me. And that's when I felt really connected. And that's when it kind of affirmed, like, yes, you do belong in these spaces and you can be here and you can take up space. So I think maybe when I was younger, I didn't realize that was happening until I got older and I was able to experience something different. So maybe that was perhaps one of the hardest challenges for me personally.
In the last, I guess, about half decade, a lot of people have looked back on your career and have said, wow, she was great. And so because of that, you became the first woman ever to be inducted into the Mi'kmaq Sport Hall of Fame, the first athlete ever to be inducted into the North American Indigenous Games Hall of Honor, and the first female athlete to be inducted to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame. When you put all of that together, what does that mean to you at this stage in your life and career?
That's a great question too, Bruce. That it really goes back to the we. I mean, it's nice for me, and I'm grateful and I'm honored to be the person in those spaces. Um, but also like it also reaffirms that family support and that community support. And it doesn't just give back to me as, perhaps that show of appreciation, but it's able for me to share that appreciation back with my family and my community. And those Hall of Honor and the Sports Hall of Fame, some of those are primarily or just Indigenous Sport Hall of Fames, and that's great. But some of those are the mainstream non-Indigenous Hall of Fames. And so I think those ones are also really special because you don't see a lot of Indigenous people sometimes in these spaces. And and you hear representation matters, but like, what does that even mean? It means that, you know, younger Indigenous people are able to come into those spaces. And when I talked about those kind of those voices and those thoughts that creep in when you feel alone and you feel like you're not meant for those things, it's not built for you. But, you know, when you see people who look like you in those spaces, it reminds you that, yes, you know, no matter what background you are, no matter girl or boy, that you belong in those spaces too, and there's room for you. And you should look at, you know, taking up that room and being proud to do so.
I think we have time for two more questions, okay? And one is going to come from Ada from the grade 7 health class at Rankin School of the Narrows. Did you ever doubt yourself, or did you always know you were going to be great in your sport? I like that question.
That's a great question. I doubted myself all the time. I did. Before every match, I would get a nervous belly. I would get, you know, sometimes I would get those thoughts of, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're not good enough. But, you know, and then I would have to stop myself and I would have to remind myself of, I worked really hard to get here. I put in that work. I put in that extra work to become really good at, you know, what I was doing. And I would have to actively remind myself, and I would do that positive self-talk in my head to do so. So I don't think I didn't look at things long term. I looked at things immediately. So very much by each match, each competition that's where I was, you know, saying, you can do this, you can do hard things. Never in a million years would I think that, you know, it would amount to these sorts of accolades and, you know, recognitions. So you know, that's the bonus that's really nice. But yeah, I never thought I would be here, but you know, I did a lot of work to kind of get where I wanted to be.
So here's a last one for you. This is a neat opportunity on these calls because if you figure we've got more than 100 classes at say 20 students a class, so maybe 2,500 kids right now listening to you. I'd love for you to share what you think is the biggest part of your story from which they can learn and build on.
Great question. I think, you know, like I said, I didn't plan to be here like this. I was just doing something that I loved. And, you know, a lot of these students on this call are about the age where I kind of started this journey. And I think in terms of when I look back on my pathway and where I started to where I am now, you know, it's because I think I was patient with myself. In the beginning, I allowed myself to be a beginner at things and to, you know, take the opportunity to learn. You know, I was patient with myself in finding something that I loved, finding something that I wanted to be good at, and then really choosing to to put the work in to be great. I didn't know I would be great. I was just at the time doing something that I loved, choosing to work hard at it, and that's where I ended up.
That's a lovely sentiment upon which to wrap here this morning. Folks and kids, I hope you enjoyed Sara-Lynne Knockwood. She's a wonderful, as I say, a wonderful young woman, great mother, a wonderful representative from her community, and obviously a phenomenal athlete as well. And Shane, I'm going to turn it back to you. We always have a little moment, Sarah, here at the end where we let kids turn on their cameras and give you a big blast of thanks. Okay, so you hang in there. But from the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame to you, thank you for doing this. Your messages were just excellent. Happy holidays to you, okay?
Thank you so much. And it's really nice to see everyone on this call. This is really amazing. And I don't know, I feel a bit emotional now that everyone's turning their camera on and I can see everyone's faces. I do want to give a special shout out to some classes because I had some teachers reach out to me. So Mr. McNeil's class at Hillside Park Elementary, Mrs. White's class at Maple Ridge Elementary, and Miss Thompson's class too, Carly Thompson's. I'm sorry, I'm not sure which school that is, but thank you all. And I see grade 6, Escazoni. Oh, this is so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and as Bruce stated, this is at the end we always like to give the teachers in the classes an opportunity to kind of turn their mics on and thank you for giving the time to us to tell us a little bit about your story and then share it with all the students in Nova Scotia. So yeah, feel free to turn your mics on and thank Sarah for taking her time.
Merci. Somebody.
It's on the big screen. We'll see our face on the screen.
Okay, on va dire au revoir.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for giving us the time. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
You did.